Hi, this is Keith Cook, along here with my partner David Harmon. We're with RE/MAX Whatcom County here in fabulous Bellingham, Washington. We're going to go over in this video what are some small things that you can do to fine-tune or tweak the process of selling a home, and what do we think these processes would do, and how would you benefit as an owner, and I guess how to look at this from a buyer's perspective. If you were to own a home, what would you do if you were a seller of this property? So these are a few things I think maybe go overlooked a little bit. Some of them may be obvious, but some people just don't get into them as much. So we think if you were to follow some of these steps or pick a couple of these nuggets up, that you will, in fact, get a more favorable purchase and sale agreement on your home if you're looking to sell. So what I could possibly see is one of the probably crucial biggest mistakes people make if you're a seller trying to sell your home is starting at the wrong price. And almost in any market is price is so important. So, and it depends on what your strategy is. Some people will have the strategies, they can always make me an offer. Well, guess what? They don't always make an offer, and your property sits on the market. Then you end up not getting people to come through because you're priced too high, and people just aren't going to come look at it. Now, all of a sudden, before you have this epiphany that you should probably price it correctly, you're 30, 45, 60 days down the road. Now you've just created market awareness, and people are just like, why didn't it sell? And you've kind of created the problem or made the home appear to be non-desirable based on really greed for trying to get extra money out of it. So usually what I've seen is people who start too high end up chasing and lowering the market, and then when a buyer does make an offer, they're still going to offer you less, and they're going to have more negotiation power. So best suggestion is start off with the right list price. You'll hopefully sell it sooner, have more interest in it, and be in a better negotiation picture for either if it's money that's your motivation or other terms for rent backs or what you want. But buyer has to feel they're getting a value on something, and most buyers aren't going to feel they're getting a value on something if it's been on the market, say, for 15 years. We got one right now we're working on, and it's a different story. But if it's been on the market for a while, really the negotiations are up to the buyer.
Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but I've had sellers say, well, we can't go up on our price. So if we don't start high, we can't
raise the price. We can lower it. Yeah, that happens. But actually you can, because if you're at the right price and you get a few people interested in it, everything being equal, one person might like it a little bit more and sweeten the terms for you, whether it's a little bit more price or a rent back or whatever you're looking for.
Right. Yeah, I like your analogy of chasing the market, because obviously that's just meaning that if you list it high, then you're just constantly having to reduce the price, trying to find where that sweet spot was. Whereas if you would have started closer to that sweet spot, maybe you would have got closer to what you originally thought. But the buyer's only going to pay what the property's worth.
And I've had these conversations with appraisers, so they'll go out and evaluate more property than we will, because they're like doing a couple of appraisals a day. And what they're saying is that the properties that are on the market the longest are actually selling less per square foot. So if you're trying to maximize what you're getting, start with the right price.
So maximizing profits, obviously the little things really add up. So making minor repairs. So if you're walking to the front door of the house and the lock is jiggly when you open it, you just need to tighten the screws there and make it look nice. If the hinges squeak when you open the door, maybe a little WD-40. If the sinks don't have drain stoppers in them, maybe put a drain stopper in them. Just a lot of little things around the house can really add up. Maybe some paint on the eaves. It really does affect the value and the profit that you're going to get on the house.
Yeah, when someone comes in and they feel that they're not going to have to put a ton of money into the property and it just feels like it's well maintained, then they're going to like it more. Just like going to your furnace. If your furnace was just serviced this year versus 7 years ago, you're kind of setting the tone on how do you maintain the home, either pride of ownership or not so pride of ownership. So you can, I think, just go right that it was maintained. You can't do that. But the furnace guys will put a sticker on there. Look for the sticker, not just some homeowner's initials and date on what they did to the furnace.
Right, and there's a lot of simple things. Just maybe it's just light fixtures or light bulbs. Maybe there's no light bulbs in half of your lights in the bathroom. There's
brighter bulbs. So don't be so cheesy and go for the 40 waters. You're selling it. Go for the hundreds and leave them on. People are only looking at the house for a couple of weeks. So leave your lights on so it seems light and bright when people come through the house.
Right. Yeah. I've seen people just come through, add some new paint to a room or throughout the house, and then maybe just replace the doorknobs. Maybe there were some old gold doorknobs and they replaced them with either black or something that was more modern, and it gave the house a whole different feel for a couple $100. So it wasn't really, not necessarily big things. We're not saying that you need to re-side the house and do all that kind of stuff, but there's just a lot of little things that, if we come out to a property and look at it, we can go over and say, this is, when we're showing houses, this is the stuff we're pointing out. So the other people that are bringing buyers to your home, they're going to be pointing out the same things.
Right. So. I 100% agree. Little things matter, and so do big things. So if it was re-siding the house, or if it was repainting, or if it was fixing broken windows, I think there's something that can happen in the big picture too. Are we making it financeable?
Right.
And so are we going to just start with like little baby repairs, or are we going to go into what's going to be more important? We just had one over in Fairhaven, and when we went there was some rot on the outside of the house. Well, we thought, why not just fix the rot? So paint it, fix the rot, take the rot off, repair it, because I was going to do a couple of things. It was going to help on financing and just overall first impressions from the buyer coming through, and it wasn't going to finance most likely the way it was. So why not make the repair and actually do a couple things at once, make it financeable and make it more attractive to someone? So we're not saying go in and do a full-on remodel on this one. This one just had some minor exterior rot. So
right.
Why not just fix that stuff and make that? Because later, if it's not fixed, you might find a buyer. They may have wanted to discount the price and then ask you to discount the price after the inspection. Then the appraiser comes back out and he wants it fixed. So
right.
The same little repair, you could have been dinged like 3 or 4 times on it, from lowering the price, the buyer lowers the price, and they negotiate, and the appraiser says something, versus just like fix it right up front, especially if it's not a big hairy deal, and just get the stuff fixed.
Right. Yeah, I think from a seller standpoint, that's kind of our job too, is to set expectations for what the seller might get for the property. So yeah, I mean, obviously if they put new granite countertops in and new appliances and do the flooring and do the roof, they're going to possibly get more money, but how much is that going to cost? Are they going to get a return on that money? Whereas maybe if they just paint, clean everything up, maybe sand the floors, get those done, take care of the important things, maybe the offset on doing all those big things, if their expectations are right, maybe it's more realistic and they're going to actually do just as well.
Let's just say you had an older house, like you have a $100,000 budget. Are you going to get the $100,000 back out of it by putting the property in? So right. We'll help you weigh the cost of it, and then if it takes you 6 months to do this work, now you've lost rent on it, opportunity cost. Where's the market 6 months from now? So sometimes it makes sense to make these repairs, and sometimes it doesn't. So right. Usually if you're at least making minor repairs or getting it financeable, that makes sense. It's these upgrades that are kind of hard to say. Now, sometimes if you're going to buy it to fix it and flip it and make it for a profit, if that's what you're doing, obviously you're going to try to maximize everything because you're the one doing the work, most likely, or participating to help force value on the property.
Yeah, and one thing that we like to do too is obviously if we go out and look at the property and maybe we have a checklist, maybe there's 10 items that really are going to impact the profit for the seller on the home. Lots of times maybe we'll have them fix 8 of them because maybe that's what their budget allows. But guess what? We're going to get a contractor to come out and give us an estimate. So maybe they couldn't get the roof done, but we have an estimate on hand from a roofer that says exactly how much it's going to cost. So when that buyer comes along, maybe the roof is only going to cost $8,000 to repair. The buyer's looking at it saying it's going to cost me $20,000. So they're going to discount. As long as we have that too, then we can create a little bit of value there for the seller, just having that on hand.
I think appearance and curb appeal or first impressions are important. So when you pull into a house, like what's the first thing you see? And does it look shabby or does it not look shabby? Are there oil stains on the driveway? Are there beat up cars and lawnmowers and washers and dryers and weeds and tall grass and paint and all that other stuff. But we can sell those. We've sold a lot worse. But if you're trying to do a little bit of work, to maximize your price is working on the curb appeal. Cut everything back, make it look good, plant some flowers, put some bark dust down, and make it look good. That's the first impression. You get one shot for your first impression. The people are going to show up either online or in person, and for the photographs, we want it to look good. And it's interesting. A lot of these will come in. I think the ones that sit on the market a little too long, the people get a little too comfortable. So they look fantastic on the pictures. When people see them online and they show up, it doesn't quite look the same. So through that selling the home process, realize it's a job. It's a job to sell a home. When you're in there, you've got to make your bed every day and do all of that stuff. But the curb appeal, keeping that up and looking good is clutch.
Right, yeah, and that goes, it's kind of like with the minor, when you walk up to the house and the front porch, it's peeling paint on it. Maybe the siding is, there's maybe just a nail and that siding's just hanging down a little bit. Just needs to be, there's a lot of, kind of goes back to the minor repair stuff. When you pull up to that house, their first impression is going to have a big impact on that. Some buyers won't even go in. I mean, they'll pull up in the front and it's like, this isn't what it looked like in the photos because they took it from a different angle. They show up and it's like, wow, this is not what we bargained for.
Yeah, maintained homes are going to sell for less maintained homes. And that starts off with the curb appeal, then follows up with the minor repairs and the bigger picture, the major repairs dealing with financing. So people are visual characters. They're going to look with their eyes. And if it looks good, it's going to look good.
Right.
I guess following that after their eyes becomes their nose. So there's something definitely, I would say, with their scent or what people are going to have. If you've got pets or if there's a smoker or there's something in the house, I think working with some of that is equally important, because you could take a great house and you go in there and it smells like cat or dog or whatever you're allergic to, or there's fleas or smokers, or it's important to make that as neutral as possible and put something out that doesn't offend someone. So if they come in and they go, it's hard to tell someone that your house stinks, but some houses do stink. And if you're going to take a huge discount, and some of them, if you've been a smoker for a long time, that's a challenging situation, because you have to come in and basically clean the walls, and then you have to seal the walls with a shellac-based primer, and then paint it again, and then start smoking outside.
Right. Yeah.
So smells are a big deal too. Like I cook bacon, it's like it smells like bacon for a couple of days. So some of the stuff, what can you do to try to make sure the home smells as good as possible?
Right. When you pull up to the house, the curb appeal, that's where the staging starts. Because you're pulling up there. If the place looks inviting, maybe there's a couple chairs on the front porch with some nice decor or something like that. It's just inviting. People want to get out of their car. They want to walk up and see what else is going on. And then once you go in the front door and you start looking around, when we come out and meet with people, that's what we go over, is how to declutter and make it presentable. Maybe you don't need the giant picture on the wall of your engagement of you on the beach in Cabo in your bikinis,
Right.
That's not maybe what's going to sell your house.
Take that down.
Maybe take that down. So yeah, there's certain things throughout the house. You don't need to have all 42 of your pencil collection on the wall.
They'll put them away.
maybe put those away, and maybe just maybe 2 pencils, not 42,000.
One, and there's 2 types of staging. So vacant homes. So that's the easiest one. I think people like to feel that they know where the furniture and everything goes. So having a vacant home, you can either sell them completely vacant or have it staged. And usually they'll stage a couple rooms, living room, dining room, kitchen, a bathroom, and throw a bed in the master or something like that. Still not necessarily the entire house, but trying to give it kind of a lived-in feel, what you would have. And I think that helps visually, because people are visual creatures. That's why that'll happen. Some people you'll see right now, if you go into a vacant house, sometimes it's like, well, where'd the furniture go? Either the stagers moved it, they got tired of it, or they may have had it even virtually staged. So you take a vacant room looking, a photograph of a vacant room, and then online people are just adding furniture and making it look different that way.
Right.
The other staging is like if you're living in the house, so what do we have to do? So like we'll show up, and I think we give staging advice quite a bit because it's for the most part people don't want to see your stuff. So like just saying staging is get rid of as much stuff as possible and or figure out how to pile stuff. So I'd rather see one totally area that's messy. So usually we give everyone the garage for free. Park your car outside for a while, stack your garage up, because I'd rather just open one room up and just say, oh, it's a garage and there's a lot of stuff in here, than go into one bedroom and it's messy, the second bedroom, the closets, the kitchen, everywhere else. So instead of having the entire house messy and a clean garage, flip-flop it and just put your stuff in the garage. And realizing that if you're selling, you're taking all this stuff with you anyway. So it's a good time to look at stuff. Do I want to donate any of this stuff? Why do I have this stuff? So either repurpose it, recycle it, or think about how important some of this stuff is to you, because sooner or later, if we're involved, you're going to be selling and moving. And do you want to take your pencil collection to wherever you're moving with? So maybe you donate it to the Smithsonian or something, but how important is that to you?
That is funny, because I've definitely walked through homes so many times with people, with buyers, and they're looking through the house and they're like, oh my goodness gracious, it's going to take these people 6 months to move out of this house because there's so much stuff.
Right.
As opposed to, if you just move all that stuff to the garage, the buyer has a different input. They're like, oh, these people are ready to move. The stuff's in the garage. It's ready. All they got to do is move the moving truck in and load it up. So yeah, it's a huge difference between what the buyers are looking at, especially if they're looking at time like, I want to get into this house as soon as possible.
Right.
And I think people have different, as far as like sellers go, when we meet with them, everybody has a different idea of what's cluttered. I mean, some people, their china cabinet that's filled to the brim looks amazing to them. And so it's definitely, it's tough to kind of educate people on the fact that the front tree in the outside that Aunt Jenny gave you 30 years ago, now it's 40 feet tall and blocking your entire house. Maybe that needs to come down because people have personal attachment to this stuff because it was their home. Unfortunately, they are selling it, so the next buyer may not, appreciate all the knickknacks that they have around.
So I'm just doing the math on that 40-year-old tree. Is it 40 feet or old? But yeah, people have a lot of actually plants. They have things that they like. If it's a rose bush, we can actually tag it, and you can take that bush with you, or fixtures if there's a light fixture. If you are interested in items that you want to keep, you can keep those. On the getting stuff ready to go, reminding me is go to Lowe's, get a bunch of boxes and pack your stuff up. You're moving anyways. Someone comes in, they look at it, it looks organized, and they can see your some logic to what's going on here. I think buyers are going to appreciate it, and it's going to look like almost one of those more maintenance and how well the home is taken care of. So once we made it past the curb appeal and they get in here, if the house is a mess, it's just not going to sell for as much.
And yeah, if you're a seller, here's a quick little trick that I just discovered. Was we actually used a professional stager, and man, it makes a big difference. If you have a house that might be a little bit dated, not like really old dated, but maybe needs updating, having the right professional stager come in and put some of that modern furniture can really add like 10, 15 years to your house and make it look a little bit more updated instead of a little bit lived in.
When a buyer's coming into the house, you want them to feel like you're coming into a hotel room. You don't want to have them come in and you've got every little picture of Jimmy from kindergarten through high school and his sister and everyone else, and it's just all family. So I mean, hard to say, but that stuff's got to come down. There's nothing on your refrigerator. You want it to seem like people come in here, it's like, does someone live here? This seems so nice and neutral. I mean, and that's if you're going to the nth degree. We can sell them at different degrees, and some people, it's almost like they feel their home would never be available for sale because they want to get it that ready to go. And so I think meeting with us will let people know it's like, all right, you've done enough. Let's stop here and let's go forward. So we've had them like, we're ready to go the next day. Like we're ready for photos as soon as we meet them and start immediately. Most people need to meet with us, and then we'll come back in a month or so after they've kind of gone over how we've helped prioritize some of the stuff to do. And I see a lot of people excited after they meet with us. It's like, thank goodness I don't have to do this or that, or we're the voice of reason if there's two owners and they're talking about what to do or not do. And there's a lot of different strategies when it comes to that. So if the home is either owner occupied or it's a rental, so If it's owner occupied, super easy. You're going to go do all this stuff yourself and take care of it, or at least you're going to have a choice on how you decide to sell the home, and whether you want to fix it up or not, that's your choice. It's a little more difficult if it's a rental. So we're still talking single family residential homes. Residential mostly under financing is considered 1 to 4 units. So assuming that, let's just say we're a duplex or a house, what do we do with trying to get the tenants motivated or understanding how that process will work for them? And that absolutely is a case by case scenario. I mean, how long has the tenant been there? What's their rent? What's the condition? How much stuff do they have? It's not easy.
Yeah, it's a fine line, because the tenant's the one that's in the tough situation, because the seller's getting something out of the deal, the buyer's getting something out of the deal, and the tenant is the one that's kind of the sandwich in between the two. Right. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear involved, right. I guess, too. It's all the unknowns, and the tenant's the one that's sitting there trying to figure it all out.
And they're the point of first contact. So usually we like best case scenarios for everyone that's involved. So if someone's going to say we're going to look at a rental, so we've talked to the owner and have an idea that they want to sell, then we go over and meet with the tenant and look at the same thing, like where are we at on curb appeal, repairs, minor repairs, but now we've got the tenant. And so we want to know what's the best case scenario for the tenant. And so we'll start, are they interested in buying? Are they interested in staying? How long would they like to stay? And we try to put it out there because realistically, it's easier to deliver what the tenant wants. So if the tenant would like to stay for another year on the lease, we've got a buyer. Ideally, we'd find someone that wants to keep that tenant there for a lease. It makes our job a lot easier, and it makes it easier for the seller if we're trying to go along with what the tenant has. And then we're dealing with how do we deal with showings and giving the tenants notice. And so usually we try to collaborate. I'm not a big fan of coming over and posting 48 hours notice to show on your door and saying, we're going to be here this date at this time. I'd rather just give someone a call and just say, does this work for you? And if it doesn't, then and make arrangements.
Right. Yeah, and lots of times it's easier for us to deal with the tenants than the owners because we're kind of a neutral third party. Right. And they maybe, it's hard to say, but usually we're respectful. Each tenant is so different, so we really have to do it case by case with dealing with them, because some of them have a ton of fear and some of them are really helpful.
It is fun. We do a ton of apartment sales or properties with tenants in there, and realizing when we go to meet the tenants have rights and the owners have rights, and we're trying to satisfy both people. So we represent the seller. So we're representing the seller, but in representing the seller, knowing that if we can help make it the best way possible for the tenant, then that works for the tenant. So trying to get everyone's best case scenario, what works best for them I think it's just a lot of listening and understanding what the questions are of the tenant and seeing what their intentions are. If the tenant plans on moving, great. That makes it easy. We'll sell it. Tenant wants to stay, that's great too. We'll try to work with them that way. Right. And the process of showing and photos or video or how the whole marketing works. But I think addressing the tenant, sometimes we'll find owners that might give the tenant a credit. So say there's 4 apartment units, and instead of bugging each tenant each time we just want to bug one tenant, well, maybe we give them half month's rent or a month's rent if the property sells, because now we've kind of enhance that one tenant's belief on, wow, if this sells, I get a month's rent. That tenant might really like that, especially if they're planning on staying.
Right.
Yep. And the tenants will have a chance to meet the buyer. So, and if there's a good relationship with an owner and a tenant, a lot of times there might be a property manager in there, so they've never even met the tenant. So we try to smooth it over as much as possible. But it is kind of frustrating. The tenants aren't necessarily getting what they negotiate for. If I sign a lease, I'm not expecting to have to show it on 48 hours notice and have people come over. What a pain in the neck. So realizing it's a pain in the neck for them and how to turn, lemons into lemonade that may work for them is in everyone's best interest. If someone's renting for $1,000 a month and the buyer of this is based in income property, buying an income property, and the rent should be $1,700, at least understanding what that rent should be and then letting the new buyers know here's what the rent could be. Whether we increase the rent or not, that's a different story. But understanding what the rents could be and using that in your marketing just to let people know what's there is big. Because we'll see, it's not uncommon to see a property and then have it sell, and the new buyer comes in and starts to raise rents. And most tenants are pretty concerned with, are the rents going up? Because if they've been there for a while, usually they're probably not above market. Usually they're going to be getting a better deal if they've been there for a while.
Right.
Some owners, I think, whether it's a mistake or not, but so where it is, you get a tenant, you love the tenant, you go out to lunch with them on their birthday, or you're nice to them. You don't raise their rent. They don't take care of the property. So here you are 20 years later, when we're trying to sell an income property. So it hasn't, it needs new everything, paint, carpet, right, appliances, door, everything. And you're getting super low rent. So, that's definitely a disadvantage to having a super long-term tenant. The nice thing is you didn't have any vacancies, but the disadvantage is you haven't had the tenant rollover. So when you have a vacancy, you're more likely to paint it. You're more likely to clean it up. You're more likely to upgrade it. So if a tenant stayed for 4 years and you've had, in 20 years, just one tenant, you've missed 5 upgrade cycles. It's all going to catch up with you all at once. Also, dealing with rental properties, I would say timing with it. And there's a few different timings as where we were talking, spring, summer, winter, fall, when to sell. Timing, I think, can be important with rental properties dealing with the lease. So if the property was just leased last month and it's out for a year, and that tenant has 11 more months on it, we're not necessarily going to find an owner-occupied tenant. Right. So working around that when it's either vacant or going to be vacant, I think would play to a seller of an investment property's advantage. If they have and I guess we're getting off track a little bit here. This is residential, and so thinking if whether it's leased or not leased, if you're going to be an investor, you're okay having it rented. So if it's a duplex or fourplex, there's a higher chance that you're going to want to have tenants there. If it's a residential house, there's a higher chance that someone's going to want to own or occupy it, not buy the house as a rental, because there's right, more apartment rentals than there are home rentals.
So one more thing to make your property more desirable is the term. So maybe offering owner financing, a lease option. Actually, we just saw this not too long ago. Maybe even your tenant, if you have a rental property, maybe offering that to the tenant. So maybe the perfect buyer is right in front of your face and you didn't realize it. All they needed is a little know-how on how to get through there. And you as the owner, maybe you can offer that to your tenant. So maybe they can just increase their monthly payment, and some of that money is going towards the actual purchase price. Maybe they have money that you don't know of. Maybe they can put a larger down payment and actually do owner financing mm-hmm. on it. So yeah, being creative with your financing is definitely going to go a long ways in marketability.
Well, in financing, there's a ton to get into, and just one, you brought up the tenant. So I'd say most brokers that I'm aware of, if the owner comes to someone and says, "Hey, my tenant may want to buy this," usually you're going to get a lot better deal on as far as mm-hmm. the fee that you're paying that real estate broker. And most brokers are going to have a huge advantage in trying to negotiate and help as a third-party negotiator put a sale together. So even if you may have an identified buyer, in my mind, it makes more sense to work with a broker, whatever that fee structure may be, but go ahead and utilize them to try to help put that together, because the third-party negotiation, instead of you and me, where we're mad at each other, if we got the broker there and then we're both mad at the bottle there. So it does help in having the wherewithal and understanding on how to put it together. And even if we had a relationship with a tenant landlord, it just really puts the focus somewhere else. So that helps a lot. And financing, it may seem silly to say, and I'm just trying to say this, but for the most part, for any rental, I would say I'd pay $1 million for any rental. And here's how it would work. Even if it's only worth $500,000, I'll still pay $1 million for it because it's based on terms.
Right.
So if I can go $1 down and $1 a month, I'll buy it for $1 million. It seems silly. I'm being funny saying that, but it was the terms that got me there. So, and on the terms, there's a few different things that people will look at: is the price, the down payment, the interest rate, and the monthly payment. Mm-hmm. And so it's a bit of a whack-a-mole where one will affect another one. The reason I would pay $1 million for a $500,000 price is based on the terms, dollar down, $1 a month, no interest. So it's a no-brainer for me. Sooner or later, I would pay it off, and I'm actually making, $999 a month while I'm doing this.
Right.
Not that I would, I could either pay it off sooner or not. So that's a crazy term, what can happen. And sometimes we're taking a property that's not financeable and ordering terms. It might not necessarily be a long term. Doesn't mean you have to be the bank for 30 years. Maybe you're just the bank for a year or two for someone to fix it up and refinance it.
Right.
There could be a huge advantage if it was a rental. If you're a seller and you're selling on a rental, there could be a property gains tax or capital gains tax that you're going to pay on that profit. So what are you going to do? Either go pay a bunch of taxes or potentially carry the financing if you've owned it for a long time and it's free and clear to a qualified buyer with a good interest rate and a down payment. And then what you're going to do is what you should have paid in ordinary capital gains tax, now you're getting interest on it. So we'll look at these on a case-by-case scenario, but instead of paying $200,000 in tax, having someone still owe you $200,000 on the property and say you're getting 6% interest on that, so you're making $1,000 a month in interest, what you should have paid in tax. So it's a big math scenario, but we're happy to go over those with you, because at least bringing up what the options are, you may not want to do that,
right.
But at least letting you know what your options are. And there are a lot of options with getting creative.
Right. Yeah. And we're obviously not accountants or CPAs, but yeah, there's definitely some advantages.
We play one on YouTube.
Yeah. There's definitely some advantage to selling on contract if you want to help defer and offset some of those capital gains. But once again, that's an accountant and CPA question. But yeah, it definitely could be a huge advantage to you as opposed to just outright selling it and paying that huge capital gain rate. Assuming you have a capital gain.
And there's different levels of risk too. So the one level of risk is, do I get it back? So if you're going to sell it, you're going to make sure that you've checked the person's credit and make sure that they've got a job and they can fog a mirror, and you've looked at their down payment. You're satisfied with all that. If you're not satisfied with this, you're not going to go that route. But there is an advantage that way. Sometimes when people are in a bit of a pinch, and this happened more in a down market where we've had properties that say it was worth $200,000. I have one. It was worth $200,000. We put an offer on it at $260,000 or $270,000. Everyone was happy, and the reason was because it actually took the seller $260,000 or $70,000 to clear title, because they owed more on it than what it was worth, and that there's a lot of homes like that, and that's where short sales came in. So how do you work one of those shorter sales, or how would you work that? Would be, in this case, we gave the buyer 5 years to come up with the money to complete the sale. 5 years later, it was worth $270,000 and it appraised. So the buyer wasn't in a position to close it right then. They thought they might be later. They were looking at they got access to the house, and it was more of a lease option or rent to own situation. These situations, in this case, it took almost like the seller more time to have the property come up to the value. So we could have sold it, 5 years earlier, only would have got $200,000. Unfortunately, it would have to be a short sale, or the owner would have to come to the table with $60,000. So why not give a tenant who's going to at least make 5 years of payments, take 5 years of maintenance and taking care of it. And best case scenario is maybe it does work. So in 5 years, they do close on it. Mm-hmm. They don't always close, but again, like I was saying, I like to go into what's best case scenario for everyone involved. And that could work for someone who, let's say, and then the tenant who just had a bankruptcy or just started a new job or doesn't think they can close on something right away. Why not, have at least the option to buy it? They could go 5 years and say, no, I changed my mind. But having that option, they can go 5 years and say, yeah, I do want to get it. Or they could go 5 years, and if depending on how they did it, say, I'm not going to close on it, but my friend is interested in closing on it at $270,000, and he's going to give me $10,000 to take over the rental. So they just got $10,000 out of the deal. So lots of ways to get creative, and that does open up selling it at a higher price or terms that are going to meet you better. Mm-hmm. And we're talking residential. We're not talking commercial or construction or builder terms or development terms. We're just talking bread and butter, residential houses. What can you do here? Understanding what do you have to sell. So if you are selling your home on an acre and it's zoned for one home, like we said, understanding that. If it's zoned for 30 homes, understanding that and understanding what can happen with the property. The next step on that, it might be zoned for 30 homes, but are there, it's kind of a bad word, wetlands. And so what are the setbacks, or what is the city going to say? And then how far have you researched the property? And usually this will happen more on raw land, because a lot of owners will just have raw land and let it sit and really not understand what they have. And they're expecting a buyer to come in and do all these studies and reports to establish what property may be worth. But when we're talking about what can you do to maximize the saleability of a property, it's understanding what you have. So if it's a residential development, you could kind of overlay this with land, but is availability of water, sewer, power, what are the setbacks? How many can I get? 30 units on there, or can I get 25 units or 20? Because a buyer's going to potentially base their offer on what their expected rate of return would be, or what their profit may be, or how many units they may get. So I guess understanding really what you have is the property dividable? Is it 10 acres, zone 5 acres? Can you split it? Open space. Is there open space? There's something as simple as making sure that as a broker, we put the clause in there for the buyer to assume the open space. I've seen it before where it's missed and the sellers had to actually come to the table and pay, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 in back taxes to take the property out of open space. So understanding what you have right there. Mm-hmm. If there's LIDs or something that needs to be paid off, if something's assumable, having the buyer assume it. There's some homes up in North County where there were sewer assessments. So you want to make sure to put in there the buyer to assume that sewer assessment.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a huge advantage to have somebody that has knowledge to help you with this, because you could really miss the boat, or you could have some downstream effects coming back to you later on for not doing your due diligence.
Yeah, they said right there, due diligence, and that's where you have enough time to research the property that you're buying, but then also having the right people involved to know who to get out there. Like I'll say, people, we know enough to be dangerous. We don't have all the answers, but trying to help you point in the right directions. Like, all right, like this one smells like we should be doing this on this one. And that's where, years and years of experience kind of pays off, is understanding like what should the next step or two be here, and making sure we don't miss them. So we don't miss much, and it's making sure to look at something. We'd rather have you as a buyer, pull out of a sale and make sure that you're getting the property that you want, versus trying to just rubber stamp it and go along with what may appear to make sense until we actually dig a little deeper, and then it's missing a few items. Right.
There's kind of like 3 tiers, especially when you're talking like vacant land. There's kind of 3 tiers. Like number 1, nobody has any idea what you can do with it. This is what we know, what it's zoned possibly. We kind of know what it looks like from, our own visual inspection, but that's all we know. And then there's number 2, where maybe you've actually had like a consultant or somebody with expertise go look at it and give some feedback, maybe do a small report. And then there's the person that's done everything that needs to be done, and it's ready to go. You know exactly what you can do to it.
Right. And 2B is someone who researched it like 20 years ago, and all these rules have changed. Yeah. So like wetlands, where the wetland setbacks and just impacts and things change a lot. So knowing what was 20 years ago may not necessarily be today.
100%. Yeah.
But so, yeah, checking things out, making sure you can put what you want to put in there. The idea is like, what can we do as far as our marketing strategy for us as brokers? So if I'm a seller, why don't you go over, just rattle off some strategies that we might do, and as well as other brokers. And so it's not just like what we would do, but what are some strategies that you see that are successful?
Well, I think number 1, just networking with our sphere of influence. So we've been in the business long enough that we know that certain brokers might have buyers for certain properties. So that's going to be probably one of our greatest assets, is going directly to them. And lots of times we know that other brokers have buyers that are looking for X, and maybe we have X now. So this is going to be the ideal puzzle piece to put together, and now we're good to go. So.
And that would be more like, an off-market sell, because sometimes there's you can look online and find the property for sale, and quite often those properties aren't put on sale. There are rules with the multiple listing on how we're supposed to negotiate and do this stuff. Commercially, it's a different animal, but I agree having networking, because even if you have a unique property, it's like networking to a larger basis. So I think of networking as your sphere locally, brokerages that you have, but then also like what are you doing to build that? And I think with networking and marketing would remind me of like, we'll put together a full package. So as much information as we have on a property, if we're going to go out to the general public, and there's actually a big advantage going for the general public. So if we're going to try to get multiple offers, there's a better chance if we let all of the brokers in town know that it's for sale, that we're going to get multiple offers coming through. And then how do we put this in what websites, and how do we, connect and socialize and network with these other brokers? Well, a lot of it is, Sphere, and a lot of it's with the multiple listing and just making sure people have it. But also once we have a property, so they understand what's there, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. If for us, I think to get the best value for someone is to let the buyers know as much information up front as we know about it.
Right. Yeah, and we definitely live in a day and time where, the media marketing is huge, and there's so many outlets, and we hit all of them.
Right.
And probably more than anybody else when it comes to like trying to get creative, because like I said, not leaving any stone unturned. That's kind of our job, and we're not doing our clients a service if we don't go to that next level and try to think outside the box and make sure that everybody knows that this property is available.
And I would say focusing our attention too, because a question will come up, well, we're not in the Pasadena Times or the Albuquerque Gazette or where we're at, and there's reasons we're not in the Seattle Times, or where are we at? It's like, our philosophy depends on the type of property. We're talking residential here. Residentially, it's going to be hard to do a breadcrumb trail from someone out of state to come in to actually locate and buy that property we're trying to market. So we list a house for sale. We're trying to market everyone who we know is going to buy in the area, because if there's only so much budget, time, and energy, we want to work with people that we know are planning on coming here, not necessarily trying to convince them to come here. So if we find those people, that's great. We're happy to work with people who are coming in from out of state, out of town. But from a marketing of your property for sale, I would say making sure that everybody locally who's looking in the market knows that it's for sale.
Right.
It's just important to have the right broker that you think is going to look after your best interest as far as marketing, negotiation, experience, and understanding, and not, I wouldn't say throw you under the bus, but understanding the situation, the property, and being able to articulate to you what may be best. And that's your situation. It may be best to sell it for less. It may be best to hold out for more.
Right.
It may be best to counteroffer. It may be best to not counteroffer. But kind of reading the room and understanding what's in your best situation. So having that broker that you feel that you can have an honest conversation with and represent you is way up there as far as what you can do best to get the most out of your situation if you're selling.
Well, thanks for sticking with us throughout the video. Hopefully you found some nuggets of information that can be helpful to you. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up, make some comments down below, and like and subscribe. And we have a lot more videos. It's a plethora of different real estate related and even some fun stuff. So yeah, check out our page, and we'll catch you on the flip side.